ago, we opened the original Special Inquiry series with a report on housing. Now, I wonder if you remember how I handed over to Jameson Clark here in Glasgow.
So you've come to Glasgow, have you? Pretty grim, isn't it? Dirt, filth, stench everywhere. And believe me, there are literally hundreds of back courts, every bit as bad as this in Glasgow. You live here?
Live here? You don't call this living. I call this existing. Who could live under these circumstances?
How many apartments have you, Mrs. Morrison?
I live in a room and kitchen. There's myself, my husband, my daughter, an old lady 85 years of age. We can't get living. There's no light, no fire. I did have a son, but he preferred army life to living, as you call it, under these conditions. But however, we'll never lack company. We've always got the rats. They're all over the place.
For the Malcolms and their two children in 1952, this was home, just a single room. The youngsters had the one bed. Their parents had to make do with a settee. No hot water, no bath, a lavatory shared by 3 families. The Malcolms had been living in this single room for 8 years. And in another single room, a parish minister spoke.
On a recent Sunday, I baptized 14 children. Later, I discovered that most of them were born in single rooms, single ends, we call them in Glasgow. I'm speaking from one now, the one in which this little fellow was born. He was born in that bed over there.
All this was 6 years ago, but to be fair to Glasgow, the city was trying to get rid of its slums. From 1921 onwards until the war, vast housing projects had already been carried out. By 1952, Glasgow, with 100,000 families waiting to be rehoused, had in fact built 100,000 new homes. And in the past 6 years, the city has spread rapidly outwards over the green fields out to the city boundaries. To make more use of its land, city building rose higher and upwards. Until today, Glasgow's land is all used up. Glasgow can spread no further. But at least one man's dream has come true. The Malcolms got away from French Street. Now they live in Cranhill. Until she came here, Mrs. Malcolm had never lived in a house with a kitchen, nor had they ever had a bathroom. For Mother, it's like the pages of a woman's magazine come true, and for Lorna, it's fun giving Mum a hand. One room has given place to 4 rooms in their council house.
It's been really marvellous doing all the windows. In fact, down in French Street, we'd only 1 window to do, but here we have 6. And I have to have changes for every window. I've now got 15 pair of curtains.
And still they can't believe it. For the first time in his life, Robert Malcolm has room for a hobby. There's still magic in the hot water tap, and in having room to be alone. For 38 years, the Malcolms had never known this freedom. They'd even married into a single room. Nerves often reached snapping point. Robert Malcolm would walk the streets until he'd cool down, while Annie Malcolm went to cry on Mum's shoulder. Nowadays, the settee isn't folded down at bedtime. For tonight, the Malcolms are part of the conventional world that has living room and bedrooms and television. So let's go back to where they came from, to the single window looking into the single room, to the room at 136 French Street, from which the Malcolm family made their escape. Good evening, Mr. Gooden. I'm Robert Reed from the BBC. I wonder if I might come in and have a look around this place here.
Yes, certainly.
Joe's 22, a chimney sweep. With the courage and optimism of youth, he and his wife Irene have done their best with their first home. She keeps the place as clean as a pin. He's papered the walls, laid the lino, and built in a new fireplace. But in wet weather, the damp shows through. There's still no hot water, and the drains are apt to smell. 136 French Street is already making demands on their spirit. If the Goodwins went, as I went, to the city factor's office looking for a council house, they'd not be interviewed today. Since we last saw these files, Glasgow has built 30,000 houses. There should be only 70,000 names on these shelves. Not a bit of it. Today there are 126,000 applications, 126,000 families waiting for 126,000 homes. The files and the arithmetic show that Glasgow's right up against it. Do you remember the city architect, A.G. Jury?
We think we've got the way out.
A new scheme?
Not entirely original, but new in action, perhaps. I did hint at it in your program 6 years ago.
Well, I remember an important point you made in that program was that Glasgow is the most densely populated city in the whole of the United Kingdom.
It still is. There's Glasgow, 40,000 acres. And this small patch represents 2,000 acres. And on that is crammed 150,000 of the city's dwellings. That is, half the dwellings on a 20th of the space.
But that's ridiculous.
Of course it is, by any standards.
What are you going to do about it?
Knock them down. These are the black spots. The areas of greatest overcrowding, unsafe and insanitary buildings. Gallowgate, Townhead and Kilkeddons, Bridgeton and Darmarlow, Partick, and we've started with the best known of all.
Which one's that?
The Gorbals and its neighbour Hutchison Town. There you have some of the worst houses in Western Europe, and Glasgow's decided they must go.
Round these doomed slums of Glasgow, I've always thought how solid the frontages seemed, how respectable, in fact, they may have been. There had been signs that Glasgow was getting ready to move. And now, here was Glasgow, already started on the biggest job of rehousing in the country, of wiping out the black spots. I could hear the demolition squads at work while the people began to move. The old homes have survived too long. New homes will be built in their places. So the great exodus is on. The new houses must hold fewer than the old. No more overcrowding, the regulations say. So the city must thin down its population. The officials call it overspill. I'd call it one of the biggest social upheavals since the Industrial Revolution. Where are these families to go? Some can be absorbed in the new council estates now strung out to the city boundaries. Others will have to travel further. Glasgow is fixing up with 30 or more other Scottish towns to adopt the 300,000 who must leave. It's like shifting the whole population of Wandsworth or Hull or Bradford, Newcastle and Nottingham. Some go to the now familiar new towns, East Kilbride, for example.
Princess Margaret said to me, when she was there a year ago, that she'd never seen such well-kept houses, beautifully dressed windows, gardens in excellent condition, and the loveliest and best-dressed children she had seen in many of her tours. And she said, if this is what a new town does, well then the more of them we can build, the better it will be for Britain.
Sir Patrick Doran was first chairman of the East Kilbride Development Corporation. Here is a new town with an old heart, a country town paradise, if you like, not so very far away from the dismal, overcrowded tenements of darker Glasgow. But respect for the past and new houses for old folk don't necessarily produce all the answers and make overspill successful. For the children of newcomers, there is the advantage of starting the real business of life in surroundings like these. Yet not everyone settles happily in the quiet space and brightness of a new town. And the whole scheme stands or falls on one thing: employment, the willingness of industrialists to move as well as workers. New towns can absorb only some of the overspill of industry and population that Glasgow must lose. The town of Girvan in Ayrshire has a special reason for wanting to help. Generations of Glaswegians have helped to keep the town alive, coming year in, year out for their holidays. Glasgow families on holiday have brought a lot of money into the town. And now, by taking some of Glasgow's overspill, Girvan can repay a debt of loyalty. It has the schools and the houses. As a holiday resort, it's geared to coping with sudden jumps in its population. At one time, as an important centre of cottage weaving, Girvan had a population of 10,000. Now it's down to 6,000 and Girvan wants to expand. The town needs the 2,500 Glaswegians it's asked for. So Provost McCulloch and the Borough Surveyor showed me the development site for new factories and also, of course, for new houses. Towns like Girvan will not have to foot the whole housing bill. Part will be paid by Glasgow and part by the government in this new migration, no longer to lands overseas, but within Scotland's own coasts. But there is a snag, a social snag, the smear of the Gorbals. Glasgow immigrants will not be welcomed everywhere in Scotland.
Let Glasgow keep every one of them. I speak for every town I know. They don't want that crowd. Let Glasgow keep them.
It's what people say in some places. What does one of Scotland's proud old royal boroughs think? Well, I found that Haddington, with its 800 years of history and tradition, has no qualms. Haddington was the first place to sign an overspill agreement with Glasgow for 250 families. When you want a house, you just drop in and see the town clerk. You step into a new way of seeing things, into a totally different kind of life.
Come in. How do you do, McVie?
How do you do, Mr. McVie?
The provost told me you were looking in. What can I do for you?
Well, Mr. McVie, if I were coming from Glasgow under this overspill scheme, how could Haddington help me to settle down? What about a house, for example?
Well, if you have a job, we can get you a house within about 8 weeks, probably.
What sort of rent?
Rent, about 30 shillings a week, and that would be including rates.
Well, that sounds pretty good, but one sec, what if I hadn't got a job?
Well, if you hadn't, you must have a job, first of all, before you can qualify for a house. But in the last 18 months, there's been about 4 new industries set up in the borough, and there should be no difficulty about jobs.
Well, that's all right. We'll assume we've got a job and a house. Yes. But there is one very, very important thing. Are Haddington people going to make me welcome?
Of course they are. There have been a number of Glasgow families who have moved into the area in the last year or two. They've all settled down perfectly well. As children have gone to school, they've taken part in the local activities and are now part of the community. And as far as any problems they may have, worries of one kind or another, which are usually very few, I'm at their disposal. They can come and see me at any time about any problem at all.
Afterwards, I imagine myself as a newcomer. I very quickly sensed the warmth and friendliness of a smallish town where you're never a stranger for long. Haddington wasn't just living on history and tradition, though style was in evidence too. It was all so different to Glasgow. I ended my tour where I'd begun it, in Haddington's very gracious townhouse. I went along to say goodbye to John McVie, the town clerk, and found him chatting with a couple of Glasgow immigrants.
You've been living through in Haddington now for 8 or 9 months, is it?
11. Nearly a year.
A year now? Yeah. How are you settling down?
Oh, fine, thank you. It's a very nice wee place.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that. And how are you finding the Haddington folks?
Yes, we are. The neighbours are very friendly, and the shopkeepers are very helpful. Well, we're very happy here.
It's a different atmosphere about this place. It's a country town with the fresh air that goes along with it. And comparing it with Glasgow and the smoke and grime you get off the factories and so forth, it's quite a pleasant change to come here and get fresh air.
You know, there'll be a number of Glasgow families coming to Haddington in the next year or two. I'm just wondering if you can suggest anything else we might do to help these families settle down.
No, I don't think you could do any more. It's up to the people that come here to make themselves agreeable, make up their mind that they're going to fit into the community, and after that it's plain sailing.
The choice has been theirs. Not just a new job and a new home, but a new kind of life. In fact, new lives for old. The choice lies before many of their fellow Glaswegians. The prospect of changing this, the vast, shabby grey city, for this, the trim, small country town. But the dark core of Glasgow's problem is still in Glasgow. From the congestion and the crowding, the jostling and the fighting, the hard facts emerge. Here's a city which can expand no further, that will have to be replanned and virtually rebuilt before it can wipe out the shame of its great slums. And while 5,000 new houses go up each year, more than 5,000 old ones fall to pieces. Owners abandon them, and the Rent Act seems to be no answer when things have gone so far. Even this can find a buyer in a housing famine. Yet in the heart of the city, in the hands of the city, the new Glasgow is taking shape. The back court becomes a garden. It'll take 20 years to change it all, but slums will be torn down by the square mile and roads and railways rerouted. This is one of the 29 schemes Mr. Jory pointed out on his map. New plans for the best known of all, the Gorbals and Hutchison Town. 40 out of every 100 people now there will have room to move and breathe and live. An old lady I met watches the passing of the old Gorbals with some regret. She's 81, lived here all her life. Well, what does she say about the Gorbals?
I feel it's all right. There's nothing wrong with the Gorbals. It's like the name is good. This last 2-3 years.
And you can still see your old house?
Yes.
And what's going to happen to the old place?
What's coming down? What's going to happen? It's just busy at it. They're coming right round.
But when it goes down, a lot of happy memories will go?
Oh, they will be. They were nice neighbours. They couldn't have looked better.
But how do you like your new place here?
I like it fine. I like it fine. I'm into the way of it.
And so at 81, this old lady begins all over again in a new home. Despite her regrets for some of the things that have gone, it's more cosy and comfortable here. A bright, airy room, easy to run, and gathered around her, of course, happy memories of the past in the shape of her own family treasures.
The very fancy furniture, it's all old-fashioned stuff.
No, but you are house proud.
Oh, I like my house. And I have nice neighbours.
Now, could you be house proud when you were in the other place?
It's the same.
Now, what is this gadget up here on the wall?
This is for the floor, heating the floor. There's one in the hall, for heating the hall and heating the bathroom. Just the same as that.
Oh, so some days you don't even have to use your...
No, I haven't used nothing for that. It's nice, it's clean too. No rating out coal fires or nothing there. And over there the fire, it wouldn't burn, it was, the place was down. We couldn't get a proper fire even behind coal.
Well, that's something new for the Gorbals, isn't it?
Yes, they're awful nice too.
Still, people have got one or two allotments of their own down there.
Aye, them and the lazy so they call them.
Are they going to be able to keep those little gardens
Well,
nice?
we're doing our best. And it's a shame to see that and let the children waste it. Anyone with young children, it's quite good, but I think that like young couples or young children should further afield. And a young family to bring up, they should go out the surroundings altogether.
But where should they go? Must they follow the successive generations of Scots and English and Welsh who escaped from the slums of British towns and cities to make new homes and new lives in other lands? This Glasgow Overspill scheme offers a solution, a chance for emigration inside the old country rather than overseas. Towns and cities helping each other, rehousing tackled on a massive scale, the promise of a great new social revolution to transform what we had to show of Glasgow in our first special inquiry.
Just a minute. I stood in this self-same spot just 6 years ago for that very first special inquiry. And as far as I can see, there's not very much difference. Part of the building here has been knocked away, but it's still pretty grim. Dirt, filth, stench everywhere. And there are still hundreds of back courts in Glasgow, every bit as bad as this. Well, you remember meeting Mrs. McGowan and Mrs. Morrison in the last programme. They're no longer here. They've moved not to a new house, but to circumstances, buildings very much like this and not so very far away. But they have the successors, and I think we'll just all work with them. Hello. You know, I stood and talked to two ladies just where we're standing now, just this close 6 years ago. Mrs. Brother, how long have you been here?
Well, we've been here over 5 years, slightly over 5 years, and well, I put their name down for a house just 4 years ago.
Mrs. McLaughlin, what about you?
Oh, she's lucky. I was born in a place, and I don't see much chance of getting out of it. There's something drastic's done.
You were born here?
Aye, and my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother were all born here. We're over 100 years in the property. All in.
Never anywhere else?
Never been anywhere else.
And can you remember what it was like for your granny, say?
Well, my own granny, she stayed in the next close, and there were 240 rats caught in the 1 year. Well, since then, it's just gradually got worse.
Well, there you are. Not very much difference from 6 years ago.
Perhaps it doesn't look like it. But in fairness to Glasgow, there is this difference. In the past 6 years, the city has built 30,000 new houses. But all the time, the demand has been snowballing, and those housing lists have grown longer and longer. And remember that all the time, more and more houses have been closed because they're excessively dangerous. All the same, Glasgow is pressing on with these big redevelopment projects. And, of course, the overspill scheme, which should be a major factor in solving this problem, granted two things: the cooperation of other local authorities, and particularly the readiness of industry to move out of Glasgow and provide work in these other areas. Just a moment, there's still something more. Do you remember that minister who 6 years ago told us that he'd just baptized a baby in a single room? Where's that child now? There he is. His family still lives in the same slum surroundings where they were 6 years ago. For families like these, there hasn't been any difference. And with those long housing lists in mind, many of them begin to wonder whether there ever will be. Yet they cling to the hope. After all, they see other people's new flats every day. In looking at the housing situation, it's just as well to remember families like these. Their plight should be a constant reminder to all of us of the size and urgency of this still unfinished task of rehousing, not only here in Glasgow, but throughout Britain.